Hi Alexander, so I'm looking at your animation here, the one you sent me over, the blocking. And I think it's fun. It's fun animation, the story is clear. I think perhaps we could push the poses a bit more and add some staggering here and there. So let's have a look at it and see how this could work. So I think as a first step, I would probably make the right eye a bit more visible. It's a bit too far away from the camera, so we kind of lose it. So I would probably move it a bit more towards the center. And then depending on how the eye line looks like, you could push the left eye a bit more towards the camera, just to keep that nice diverging eye thing that you have in there. Then the issue with this transition, in my opinion, is that you don't really you don't seem to anticipate it with anything there. So I think you need to decide how is it that you want to get from this pose to this pose. Right now you have a bit of a motion with the head in here, some sort of tilting, and then you have the head moving up, but then you go straight into the pose. So I think this one pose should either stay longer and then allow for a breakdown to reach the anticipation pose we have later on, or you could already go you could already try to ease towards the anticipation here. Actually, you have just one frame, so you go to 9 with this head tilting up, and then one frame later you're already moving. So I suspect this is not going to work too well once you spline. My suggestion is keep 10 as it is, well, for now, and then current 9 you move it at 8 so that you have a couple of frames there. And I think you should already try to change the curve of the body so that you're hinting at things to come, you see. So let's say that I will keep this body line here just to see what happens. So you see that now we have a bit of anticipation going on with the body, and then the body actually pushes that way. And what you could do with the head, instead of going up in here, is you could possibly go down. Let me check if that would make sense. So perhaps I could go lower a bit, and you could anticipate the closure of the eyes in here. They could already be half closed. So yeah, I think that could work. Possibly you will have to keep the head a bit more towards the left, so a bit more of this kind of arc. And I think the wings should take part in it. They should probably raise a little at the root and stay down. And stay down at the bottom. It's difficult to imagine that movement in 3D, sorry. So just to use this pose as an anticipation, if you want to keep this idle pose, you can do it. You just have to move the whole animation a few frames to the right. I think there is scope to keep that initial pose a bit longer, in fact, some 5 frames longer. Either way, this pose needs to become some sort of anticipation. It needs to happen a couple of frames before the actual big anticipation there. By the way, that will mean that instead of going in a single pose from this pose with the feet on the floor to this pose with the feet high and moving all the body, you can have the feet still on the floor on 9, and so on 8, there will be the new 8. So at the beginning you will move most of the body and the head, and then once we establish the body has moved, you raise the leg as well. Otherwise you are going to move body, head and leg at the same time. It's going to be harder to read. It's still going to look good, but not as good as probably you could have it. So that will be it for this transition, I think. And I think really you could possibly on 10 you could possibly delay a bit this I don't know, is that a pole? I don't know how to call it, so that in the next frame it won't move. You see now it moves 1 to 1 with the body every time, but if you delay it at 10, then at 12, actually at 15 I suppose, you can move it a lot closer to the body, and now that would become the latest motion coming in next to the body. And then I wouldn't let's see how it works. And then on the way up in here, say, so on the way down with the body on 19, I think you want to try and have this even higher like this, so that it comes later. And then at 21 you can try pushing the thigh a lot more to the back while you delay the pose. And that will, I think that will improve this transition. And I really like this transition. It is, the head starts to depict a nice arc that goes down this way, then sort of stops there. So this will be the arc you're depicting here. I kind of feel that if after stretching, sorry, if on this pose you were a bit lower with the head, say like this, for instance, and then you had one further pose somewhere where you were a bit higher with the head and a bit lower with the bum there, then you would have a nicer arc going up, and you would have a line of action which is more towards where the egg is going to go, because now it's all a bit now it's all a bit horizontal. The bum and the head are sort of in a flat line, but I think if you stretch the head a bit higher up and perhaps lower the bum a bit more, then you will get a nice line of action which is already telling us where the egg is going to go. So you're already helping us understand what goes on. And in here we'll probably rotate the pose so that instead of seeing this finger, let's call it that way, that claw frontal, we see it a bit more like this, a bit more angular there, just so that it retains its features of being a claw. And this is when I would probably add some stuttering, at least in the I would say in the head and in the back claw, something like. And now my camera is too slow to get it, but it's like as if you were sitting on the toilet, just so that you understand what I mean. So you're really pushing there, okay? So that will work a lot more, I think. And I think in when the egg pops out, I think you can open the eyes a lot more, and if you find you could animate the texture and make the eyes a lot smaller, or well, I don't really know what's the I would imagine, I don't know why I would think of them as being smaller. I mean, I would have to try it out to see, I guess. There you go. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I would have imagined smaller, but I think either if you go big, you should go a lot bigger. I would exaggerate whatever thing you decide to do in there. I would go smaller, but I'm not sure. It's something I would need to try there. And as you stagger with the head, I would also move this sign deformer a bit so that we have the staggering in the beak as well. And then for the exit of the, I think for the exit of the neck of the egg, you need another pose in which the bum, instead of moving towards where the egg is going, it moves the opposite way, like a cannon. So the back goes this way, it goes closer to the head, and then you need a pose in there where the egg is coming out but not quite so yet. And then you can, after you shot out the egg, you can go back to be stretched, okay? But I think you need there a pose pretty much, as I said, like a cannon there, and as it shoots, it travels back, okay, this way. Otherwise it's going to, I mean, it works already, but if you want to make it work a lot better, I think that will work. And then I think you can't really have the egg roll around. In my opinion, one of the characteristics of the rolling eggs is that they roll this way, right? They don't really roll around their pivot. I mean, around a spherical pivot there. Which is going to explain also why you're going to be able to stop later on. So I wouldn't make it round. I would still keep it a bit more eggy as a shape. And this shape of the egg in here doesn't really look like an egg yet. You have to taper it a bit more at the top. And then for the new chicken to be born, you need to, I think in my opinion, you need to squash the, you need to animate a texture showing the cracks coming up. So essentially you would have a texture with the egg all cracked, and then you would have a ramp which goes from dark to bright, and you would animate that ramp as a visibility of a layered texture, and that would show you the cracks. I know it's not exactly the same thing as having cracks, but it's so small on screen. And if you want, you can Google 2D sampler info in Maya. 2D sampler info, and it's a tool that is used. It was used once to do velvet, but now it's used to do also X-ray shaders. Actually, it's called sampler info, not just 2D sampler info. So let's say that in here I have, it's something we have seen in class very briefly, I think. So let's see, in here I have my egg, and these lines are the cracks. I didn't paint them, but you get the picture anyway. And that's, the cracks are just the color that we have on the egg. What we can do is we can grab a sampler info in the hypershade. You just type in sampler info, and that's the way you get it. And then a ramp, a regular ramp, that if I plug this ramp into the color, that's what you would get in there, right? A black and white gradient. Now what I can do in there is I can use the sampler info to inform the ramp. So if I open up the UV chords of the ramp and I connect the facing ratio, you have to hit 3 on the sampler info to see the output. If I grab the facing ratio and I connect it to the UV chord and I delete the, I can delete this place to the texture, I don't really need it. So now I should be able, if this is the UV chord, the U chord, and if the type of ramp is U ramp, now you should be able to see a mask that is always relative to the camera, right? See that? I rotate around, the mask is always relative to the camera. So if at this stage I make a layered texture like this, and I put the grid as the first layer, and I don't know, any other color really as a second layer, I would put, I don't know, I would put black, and now I use that as a texture. Right now I should be seeing the grid, right? But if into the grid alpha I plug this ramp, then I should be able to see the cracks when I needed them. So I'm going to grab the out color of this ramp, and I'm going to connect it into the alpha. And now by animating the ramp, see that? I can show the texture where I need it. And it doesn't need to be also just I mean, it could be a ramp which is mixed with a fractal, it could be anything. You could even, your animation is so fast that it could even be, you could even draw the cracks on the egg in 2D if you really wanted, and it's just for 2-3 frames. That's an approach I would probably take to solve that problem. So now, so the egg needs to squash, and then as it breaks, I think you will need perhaps a bit of a longer time with the egg only, so that you can stretch and then you can disable the visibility of the egg and just throw around a couple of big chunks of the egg just this way, and you make them bounce off, or you could even throw them really fast out, or if you make them end up on screen here and there, then of course they need to stay there for, also at the beginning they need to be there. Okay, which would probably add to the story something, I suppose, because we would have the chicken in there at the beginning with some dirt. It would look like pieces of shell or something. So it's not, I don't think it's going to be a big deal. I think you're rather free in what you can do there. Now the way the chicken comes out, I think you will need at least one pose before this one, because it's a big change in here as we go up. So perhaps I would put in there another pose where the chicken is a bit smaller. The head, maybe the head is here and the beak is here. Something with this kind of line of action, just to tell us that there's something coming out. And then the issue in here, I think, is that you're going out head first, and then the next frame the head sort of stops, and then it moves a lot again. So I think you have to decide there what's the motion. I would kind of, let's have a look at how it goes. Just a second, let me play through it again. I think it's just a bit strange that we're pushing the head so high so fast, and then the next thing we know we are delaying it a lot. I would probably have the head still, or yeah, no, you know what, one thing you could do is perhaps move this, any pose that happens from here on, you move it on a layer a bit higher, say by this amount, so that it will feel like the head is keeping that motion, and you still keep the overlap you wanted to have. And I think in here perhaps you could open the beak a tiny bit, and then close it here, and then at say 88 you just open it up. In fact, you could open it up a lot, so that with the stretch you also are opening the beak. If you had a tongue, that would be great. And I think the problem with this flapping is that the body stays in super still. I think if you want to freeze a character up in the air like you're doing, you need the body to take part a bit more. So this bulge, this hunch should probably be moving around here, so that the body also, the center part of the body, takes part in the stretch, because right now it's clear that you're only doing it with the tail and with the neck. So, and I think you can, what you could do is, as you go up, as you go down with the wings, you could move the whole center part of the body a bit higher up, just so that, just like birds do really, because otherwise it feels like you are freezing the character there and just moving some controls around. It's looking already nice, you know, but I mean, maybe we could push even more in here. And then And then I think that in this pose you already want to give us some sort of crazy posing with the eyes. Something that is not that closed as you have it now, just because it's a bit of a shame to lose this posing, to have this posing pop out just in one frame without knowing much of it. And in this pose on 85, this sort of appendix that you have in here should still be lower in my opinion, and so should this guy here, so that in the next pose they could come back higher and swing up. Because right now you are there with both of them, with one of them already high up, but you had no time to go high. That's supposed to be low at this stage, still not gotten there. So, and in general, when you do this kind of staggering motion with the pose, I would call them pose, and I'm sure that they have another name in English, I just don't remember it or don't know it at all. So in general, you don't want to stay always on the same poses, and here it feels like you're just swapping between two poses. But try to, if you stagger say one way down here, for instance, try maybe you have one stagger here, and the next stagger you don't want it to have again here down here. You want it to have somewhere else. You see, so that you're still describing some sort of arc there. And then perhaps you come back over here, but you don't want to go back to the same pose. Okay, you want to describe some sort of zigzaggy arcs in there, but you don't want to go back and forth between two poses, because otherwise it doesn't really read like a noise there. Okay, well, it reads like a noise, but I don't think it reads like the noise you would want to read. Then I think pose 102 for the left leg could be already a lot more exaggerated. Could go down, and you could open up the clothes a lot more, so that you're telling us, look, we are going down. And I think 102 for the wings should have the tip of the wings still down. Otherwise there's so much motion up here that we lose the fact that they're going down. Okay, so right now most of the motion, most of the spacing takes part in here. We don't want that, because you want the audience to look at the leg going down, so we just want to push the leg down a lot more. So if you could stretch this thing a bit more, even more than I did, I think that will work. And I would already pop the eyes open here. The problem is that you have some nice eye expressions there, but you never quite feel like we see them. So just pop them open and make sure the right eye isn't really hidden from us. It's a bit more visible. And I think this pose is fun. I think you could delay the right claw a lot more there. I think this smearing is fun with both the shape and the double eye there. You could possibly afford to have both the eyes there. I think with the beak is a bit too long. You should probably be arching this way and keep and preserve the length a tiny bit more. And I think the wings could do a bit more of an arc this way, if you can, that is, because this way you would be sort of implying that this part is already coming back into position, so it's not just a subject to the overlap, but there is some wheel there. And I think on 107 the right claw could already have a contact, perhaps not with the whole foot, but with the claw. And I would try not to cover the feet entirely there. I would try to lift the wing in here a bit just to see the feet a tiny bit more, just because you're occluding them. And 108, in my opinion, should have perhaps the base of the wing still already down, but I would delay the tip of the wing a bit more. Yeah, I think it would work. And in on 109 you will find that the is this a crest? I don't remember what's the name of this. I think that should still be up, because that's when you hit the floor with the head, but the crest is still up. It should come down later in another pose. And I think you can also you can put the very tip of the beak up a tiny bit. That would be fun. And then as we go up, I think between 112 and 115 you need a tiny bit more time and a breakdown where you put the head more or less the same height where it is here, but with the beak, say, a bit lower, so that the last motion will be that of the head moving up. See that? And also the those sort of appendix down here should be probably low still. And then they will start to go up in here, but the bottom will still be low. And then they would be coming up as the head goes down, and they would dangle and come back. See that? That's what you would like to do. Right now the problem is that also it feels like the head goes down and the tail goes up by the same amount. So probably in there, I think if you could on 112 you could try and keep the very tip of the tail still up, and then lower it on 115, and then it could then come up. There you go. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I think you could push it a lot more, as I said. There are a lot of things that could be done. I think you need to break down the motion a bit more, because you tend to put a bunch of actions into the same pose. This one is indicative to it. I mean, you go down with both the whole body and the head and also the crest there. So, I mean, there are different approaches to this. I've seen people keeping this pose, and then once they spline, they just make a mental note of going there and fix this stuff and just put the crest back up. And then I've seen people just deciding to make another pose where the crest is up, and they work into the pose here a bit more, so that when they go to spline they have less surprises. It's really down to you. At the beginning I would just take a mental note of this problem here, and then when I went into splining I would fix it. But then in time I just developed the habit of making all the poses I need before I go into spline, because when you go into spline you often have very bad surprises where the animation suddenly doesn't work, becomes very floaty, and you don't know why. I mean, it's very difficult to troubleshoot, I think. So, and in fact it tends to be a kind of a nightmare, I think, especially when you're starting to animate. So in general I prefer to have all of my poses there so that I know what goes on. But I think both approaches are valid. It's just the way you decide to work. So that's it. Have fun. Bye bye.